Hello, I'm Dr. Greg Winteregg, CEO of the Private Dentist Alliance. I want to talk to all of you students out there today who are wondering what your future is going to be like as a career in dentistry. As an assistant, as a hygienist, as a dentist, where is this profession going with the rapid increase of the DSO movement? I'm here to tell you that PDA is going to help you, and I want you to become a member today. It is free. Now, why should you become a member? You're going to get weekly video updates from me, and you're going to get regular updates of our newsletters from the Alliance on exactly what is happening and how we are going to help preserve and protect the private practice of dentistry. Now, to me, the most important advantage is you are going to get access to our job board. What is that? Our private practicing members all have access to our PDA job board, which means if they have an opening in their private practice of assistant, hygienist, doctor, front office staff, they're going to be able to post it. And you're going to be able to check up regularly. And as our membership grows, we're going to be covering larger and larger territories across the United States. If you are looking for a job in any position in the office of a private practice, you need to become a student member today. It is free. Go to www.privatedental.org and become a student member today. You're going to love your benefits. Do it now.
What is up, guys? It's your boy Matt Havis back at it with the Dental Supervised Podcast. Today we have on Dr. Trent Neisen sitting down with us again for part 2 of his series about how to acquire your private practice. So, Dr. Neisen is a private practicing dentist in Minnesota. He's in his second month of private practice ownership. He loves the process. He went through it. He's here sitting down with us today to give us the hot and fresh take on what you need to do and tips and tricks to facilitate it to make it the best possible experience for you when buying your office. So he provides a lot of good tips on practice brokers, dealing with the business aspect of it, finding an associateship initially just to get your skills honed before you're ready to jump to the private practice ownership. And he just provided a wealth of information. We're going to keep listening to this. This is all pertinent information. Whether you're 1 year, 2 years, 10 years away from owning your own office, this is definitely something that you want to keep in the back of your mind, in your repertoire, to help you acquire that office. So, as always, follow us on Instagram at dental.student.vibes. Make sure you give us a like, comment, share with a friend. Let us know what you think of the podcast. We'd love to hear your feedback. If you guys want somebody on, you let us know who, and we will get them for you. So, as always, stay safe and vibe on.
We have Dr. Neisen with us today, and we're going to be talking about his journey, his career through dentistry, and now this is part 2, and we will be talking about his career as an associate and now as a practice owner. So Dr. Neisen, let's just jump right into it. What was your experience at the end of your AGD program when you were applying to jobs? How did that all play out?
Yeah, so now we're getting into more recent memories here, so they should be fresher. So at the time I finished my residency program in Mesa, Arizona at AT Still University. So I began my search mostly locally. My initial plan was actually to probably end up working for a DSO for my thoughts were maybe 6 months to a year while I started to begin the process of looking for a practice. That was my initial plan. I had met with a couple of DSOs and none of them were really quite the right fit. I had spoke with I know I had interviewed with another doctor about kind of being a partner, and that really also wasn't a great fit. So it definitely took a lot of feelers. You send them out, you have some conversations, and you really try to find what you think would be the right fit for you. But it definitely takes like I said, it's not gonna. I don't think someone's gonna apply for one job. It's gonna be the perfect fit, and they're gonna find that. You really got to decide what's gonna work, what's best for you, and kind of what I talked about earlier, just what's really gonna align with your vision.
Right. So when you were applying, what were some things that you looked for? And also, let's definitely talk about the equity position or partnership opportunity.
Yeah. So as I probably stated earlier, I knew that my vision was I wanted to be solo doc, sole owner. If in the future that would expand, I wanted to be the one who had that opportunity and the one that can make that choice. So the initial one was, very nice dentist. I think she was just a little overwhelmed with some of the management parts of it, and was just kind of getting burned out. Was looking for somebody to basically come in, kind of just be a 50-50 partner with. And I just knew that if I would have taken the job, I just knew it didn't really align with what I was looking for and what I ultimately wanted. And so I didn't want to kind of string her along and, say, oh yeah, I'm here for this, and just to take some clinical experience. So I knew that really wasn't the right fit. As far as some of the DSO meetings and things like that, I just don't think what they were looking for and what I was looking for really aligned super, super well.
Okay. Right. Because I'm sure you experience the same thing. We have a ton of DSOs that come into school and, basically do the song and dance. So trying to recruit us. So it's definitely, yeah.
It's tough, and it's tough for both ends. I think DSOs, I think they definitely have their place, and I'm sure there's plenty of docs that are probably doing it and are super happy with it. For me, I just, like I said, that was probably my initial plan, was just to do that. But the ones that I ended up interviewing with, like I said, just wasn't the right fit. The opportunity that I ended up coming across, I thought was going to be a great long-term fit. And I'm not going to go into the ton of details about this, my year of associateship, and kind of what I want to stray there, but it was basically kind of promised like a very high level of mentorship and a transition into the sale of the practice. But ultimately things kind of went sour pretty quick. I ended up working for him for a year. He did teach me a lot, but I feel like I also helped provide a lot of care to the patient base. And ultimately we kind of came to parting terms, and kind of decided that I was going to go in a different direction.
Right. So before we get into the acquisition, let's talk about literally your first months as a dentist. First months with your license. What was that like? How was it, actually, getting paid? Also, can you please talk about getting insurance, like all those little sorts of things that you don't really think about that you have to do, check the boxes before you start working?
Yeah, well, I guess we can kind of begin with licensure, and I got licensed in Minnesota before I left, and then ended up really not using that. And then I got licensed in Arizona, and then when I decided to go back to Minnesota, my Minnesota one had lapsed, so I had to reapply. So basically, I've been doing the licensure dance every year for the last 3 years, and I'm hoping I'm done with it now. But a lot of that stuff is just it's paperwork, it's money, it's time, it's boxes to check, it's things to get notarized. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into that, especially like, people that are maybe coming towards the end of their dental school journey, or say AEGD or GPR. You got to start. You can kind of begin that process a little early, and I would, because it does take time for paperwork, and then they say you need this or that. So it does take a lot of time. So I would highly recommend someone to get started on that process early. And it's everything from, background checks to make sure your CPR is active. So there are a lot of hurdles that come with that. The next question you had asked about was insurances. So yeah, you do got to kind of get your, obviously like I'm assuming the first thing you're talking about is like a malpractice or a, insurance like that. And yeah, you definitely got to get that. Sometimes, an employer will pay that for you. Sometimes you have to get your own. I was in the camp where my employer did provide that. And then obviously you got to get, a good disability policy. I definitely would be a strong advocate for that. And it's probably not even a terrible idea to have like a term life insurance policy as you're young and you maybe have loved ones. So those are the insurance policies that I currently have in place, and are definitely good to to get involved, well, kind of essentials to get involved with as you're beginning your career. The next thing you had kind of asked was about what is life as a dentist begin? And it's, at the beginning, it's strange, man. There's no prep checks. There's no start checks. There's no, there's no one over your shoulder. There's no one to tell you if you need to reduce more. And, and unfortunately, sometimes you find out things, after the fact. So a big thing I would be a big, strong word of advice I would provide to fourth year students is really try to be really critical and critique your work before you have your instructor come over, because eventually you're not going to have someone to say, oh, you still have decay here, or, oh, you need to reduce this more, or, oh, you got a root tip here, because eventually you're going to have to be your own judge, and you're going to have to be, your own guide. But, I'll be honest, early on, it's, you'll make mistakes, and, it's deep decay, and you maybe didn't explain it enough to them beforehand. You thought you did, but then they're calling, complaining, saying you drilled too far in their tooth, or, you maybe didn't tell them that they're going to have significant post-op swelling and discomfort after extraction, and, they call you and complain about that. So you learn a lot of lessons pretty quick, and, even the best that you do, you're still going to have mistakes, and you're going to have things that don't go great. And unfortunately, that's probably why I'd be a strong advocate for, being an associate from the start, and especially if you can have somebody kind of at least another doc with you, or a mentor doc, because, and thankfully I even had, an additional year of that with my program, but there's so much that, dental school, it can kind of teach you a lot, and you can do as much as you can, but you're still not going to see everything or know how to handle everything. So early on, I think mentorship is really big, because it is tough at the beginning, and you pour your heart into it, and patients still aren't happy sometimes about stuff, and things still pan out the way you want them to. So it's also really important to kind of keep your mental health in check, and and not to put so much pressure and stress on yourself early on if things don't go perfect. I think as long as day in and day out you're doing what you believe is the best for your patients and trying to provide the best care, you can hang your head on that at the end of the day, but you can't over critique and overthink about things, because I certainly did.
Right. So what were some struggles that you had when you started working? I mean, it's the first time that you have assistants. It's the first time you're managing staff. What was your experience with that?
I think one of the first big things is really it's obviously you have more of a time crunch and a time pressure, and it's you have hygienists waiting for checks, or you have a patient that's called the front desk, and then the front desk has got a question for you, and at the same time you're trying to fit your matrix band, and it's a bloody mess back there, and you can't get it sat properly, and patients getting frustrated, and it's really it's just more than anything, it's just kind of a volume of things that you're juggling early on, and and then at the same time you kind of have to make sure you carry yourself with someone who is still confident and still a leader and still in charge. So it's more than anything, it's the multitude of factors. It's like, say, in dental school, you're just dealing with this one patient in the chair, and you're dealing with one part of the prep that no matter where you look, turn their head, mirror, nothing, you can't see it, and you're trying to get that part of the prep smoothed out. Or like I said, you're taking out a tooth, and it's just whatever it might be, it's difficult to see, difficult to access, patient can't open very far. You have those clinical challenges when you start with, but as you start in dental school, but as you transition into the real world, you start to add more managerial and other components that do make things challenging. And like I said, probably the biggest thing early on is time, and that'd be another big thing I would be an advocate for students, especially in their third and their fourth years. Start to just time yourself a little bit and say, okay, like I've given myself 20 minutes, and we should be at a good point of getting the instructor back over here, look at this in 20 minutes. Whereas, what is it? There's a certain law. It says basically work expands to fill time allotted. And that is so true. If you got all afternoon to do this, it's going to take all afternoon. Whereas if you say, okay, I want to be at a good point here in 20 minutes, then you actually kind of, it puts your feet to the fire a little bit.
Right. I totally agree with that, because when I do like an exam right now, it takes the whole, 3 hours? But, we got to do like diagnostic casts for every patient. But then if I squeeze 2 exams in one block, I still can do them. So like they're exactly what you're saying, you know? So
It's so true. And that's even true to me now. If it's the last patient before lunch, you know, I'm going to, even now, I still struggle with that versus if I know I have another patient in another chair waiting, it's going to put different pressure on yourself. So sometimes pressure is a good thing. And it is like the biggest thing will be speed and clinical efficiency. And, you know, even right now, me being out a couple of years, I'm still growing, and I'm way further than I was a year ago. I'm light years beyond, you know, where I was, you know, 3 or 4 years ago. So it's a continuous process of growth.
right. Pressure creates diamonds. There we go, baby.
Absolutely.
So now as you started moving towards your acquisition, let's now dive deep into that. So how did you start out? What did you start out with, just looking at demographics? Where did you start on your journey?
Ultimately, when things with my associateship and first attempted purchase kind of went south on both ends, my wife and I, we decided that we wanted to go back to Minnesota. And so I began the process basically by looking at all, you know, all brokered listed, you know, listings in Minnesota. So you kind of reach out. There are, if people who are not familiar with this, is basically there's companies that their job is basically to sell dental practices. So I think probably the first step and the most low hanging fruit is to reach out to them. They're going to have, you know, practices that are listed for sale. A lot of times what they do is they keep them generic to kind of protect the selling doctor. They'll say, you know, practice doing $750K in western part of the state, or, you know, awesome practice doing 1.5 in the busy metro area. They try to keep it generic. And basically what you do then is you sign a non-disclosure agreement with the broker. And then what they'll do is they'll start to provide you with some of the financials of the practice. You know, what are they doing? What do the bills look like? What does the overhead look like? How much have they collected the last couple of years? And they're all going to kind of vary in what they give you, but they kind of give you, you know, your snapshot of what this practice looks like on paper.
Right. So I just signed an NDA to start looking at practices with a broker. What kind of broker did you use, and what do you think about like dual representation, all of that sort of stuff?
I think the whole dual representation does kind of present some challenges. I think at the end of the day, a broker works for the seller. I think ultimately you have to always keep that in mind. And the broker that I ended up working with, he is actually a lawyer here in Minnesota, and I guess I can say his name. His name is Ryan Bregman. He's a Shea Practice Transitions, and I thought he was very fair, very good to work with, a good guy. So I really don't have, you know, many complaints on the end of what my experience was. Sometimes, you know, the brokers can be challenging to deal with. You know, you can hear a lot of things on Facebook groups and podcasts, but on my end, I was very happy with the guy I worked with. He was very responsive. I thought he did a great job of, you know, advocating for his seller, but while also just maintaining open lines of communication. You know, when things would come out throughout the deal, he was very communicative with my lawyer. So I had a good experience with my transition process.
Okay, great. So what were some of the KPIs that you were focused on when going through the practice financials? We'll start out with the financials.
Yeah, I read a lot of books kind of in preparing for this, and I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's written by a CPA, but basically he said, kind of to start your look, he said, for the most part, practices usually doing under like 600 or 700. He's like, generally, he said, if you can avoid them, he would. You know, there's certainly plenty of instances where you can kind of do that, but I kind of was of the camp of kind of avoiding maybe the fixer upper, in terms of, there's a lot of practices that you'll see like, oh, you know, it's doing 475 and they only want 250 for it. But a lot of the things that I've listened to and learned from have kind of geared me towards that, buying something that is doing a little better, because that's at least going to have more cash flow that's coming in. You're going to pay more for it, but you got to think of it, you're kind of buying an engine, and that's the big thing. You want to buy something that's already moving. You know, you can certainly do a startup, and that was actually something I had thought about for a long time. But obviously with that, the pros of startup are this gets to be your baby. You could design every aspect of it from the beginning. The cons are, it's like a rocket ship getting off the ground. That takes a lot of fuel and time to get it just to break through, you know, in the rocket ship analogy, you know, through the atmosphere. And it's kind of the same thing with that. It just does take a lot of time, effort, marketing, and picking the right area. When it comes to, you know, an acquisition, you obviously, let's say you said some KPIs to look at. You know, so a big thing for me was I wanted something that's actually, you know, producing a fair amount. Mine, he was producing between, over the past few years, kind of between 1.1 and 1.3 is what production was. Next thing you want to look at is, you know, where is overhead at? You know, you want to make sure that you're obviously going to invest the time to buy this. I know money can kind of be a taboo topic, but ultimately, if you're going to buy something, you want to buy something that's, you're not just buying an expensive job where you would have made more just being an associate, you know, something. It doesn't matter if you to produce 1.5 if the bills are 1.4, you know? So that was another factor I had looked at, and I looked at it kind of not only where is it at now, but where could it be? Is there opportunities to modify? You know, what are the modifiable factors of the overhead and what are the non-modifiable? So those are a couple of the factors. And then I'd say another factor to look at is what's the procedure mix of the practice? I knew that implant dentistry was a big draw for me. So I knew that I was either going to have to buy an existing practice that had zero implant base onto it, but I was going to have to, you know, basically bring that whole to the system. And what I mean by that, you need surgical motors, instruments, you know, and then you basically need to kind of teach a patient base, like what are the steps of implant dentistry. The really beneficial thing about my acquisition was this doc was doing that. He was doing a fair amount of implants, and you know the patient base was kind of established with that. You know, they knew what the process was, and a lot of the systems and things were in place. The one thing I did have to buy was a cone beam CT. The doc wasn't using cone beam technology, but other than that, the rest of the, you know, the supplies were there, you know, and the
Right.
systems were there, and the staff was familiar with it. So those were probably some of the biggest things that drew me to this practice. And I mean, a huge side benefit was it was literally 30 minutes from where I grew up and about 45 minutes from where my wife grew up. So it's a town I was very familiar with. I didn't know this dentist personally beforehand, but once the opportunity kind of presented, it's kind of crazy how much the stars kind of lined up for what the selling doc was looking for, as well as what I was looking for as a buying doc.
Okay, so you're saying about the implants. So when you were looking specifically for a practice that did implants, or you know, that you would have to build it up yourself, did you feel comfortable at that point to start doing implants day one?
So the kind of the steps before this were the AEGD gave me quite a few reps, and then actually even the previous year of private practice, I had quite a few opportunities as well. I did have some good clinical mentorship in the year prior to where, yeah, I felt I'd feel pretty comfortable with a lot of, you know, singles, you know, immediates. I'm kind of getting to the next step where, you know, we're getting more towards the full arch and things like that. But yeah, so this is where this AEGD really helps me to be to this point in my career to be comfortable to take on a patient base like that, because that's exactly right. Say a new grad who hasn't necessarily ever placed a single implant, this wouldn't have been a great fit, and it wouldn't have been a good fit for me coming right out of dental school. So that's a big factor where, you know, you got to look at what's there, what are they doing. And the worst case scenario is to buy something that you can reproduce. You know, say you're a new grad and you're going into this big high-end cosmetic all-on-4 place. Well, unfortunately, until you've developed that skill set, that's really going to be a hard practice to upkeep, or, you know, even to maintain. You won't be able to maintain that. On the vice versa, you know, a new grad or, you know, someone with just some clinical experience, and you start to invest in some CE and you really start to get yourself leveled up, and you go into, say, a traditional bread and butter practice where there's just a lot of work that hasn't been talked about, a lot of patches of things that should have been crowned, a lot of teeth that need to, you know, come out, a lot of big, you know, failing amalgams. That's a golden opportunity for kind of a young dentist coming in with a fresh, you know, basically a fresh education, with energy, with a lot of things. You got to realize a lot of older docs, they get tired, man. They get tired of stuff, and they're just like, you know, don't even want to try to tell them that they need another crown, or, that a lot of them just, they get towards the end of their career, they're just kind of just maybe ready to move on. And there's just a lot of work that should have been talked about, but wasn't. So, some of these, just like I said, a lot of these bread and butter offices where there's a lot of opportunity, where if the right doc comes in, like I said, with a good skill set, a good energy, and good leadership skills, there's a ton of opportunity. Because that's also what I've found in mine. There's just a lot of work that just, a lot of restorative work that just wasn't really talked about. And I come in and take a clinical photo of it and show them what I see, and say, hey, if you were my sister or my brother, this is what I'd do for you.
Right. So, what do you remember, like, what percentage of the clinical procedure mix that the implants were?
That is a good question. I don't know if I actually got a super detailed breakdown of it. I think in 2019, I think he placed like 100 implants, and in 2019. So that kind of gives you an idea. If you're thinking he was doing 4 work days, I would say he was doing, say 2 a week would probably be, that'd be on a 50-week year. But I think it was somewhere right around 100. As far as total revenue, I didn't have that number off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm. Was there a line that you would look at? But did you find a lot of practices that were doing implants?
No, not really. No, a lot of them were, like I said, at least it kind of depends where you're at and where you're looking too. Everywhere it's going to be, a little different. If you're buying like a top dollar practice in a big metro area, chances are there's going to be more, more technology and more stuff like that. I probably looked at a total of, seriously looked at probably like 8 or 9 of all the brokerage listings that I had. And it was just kind of like, once I dove into this one, I knew it was the right fit for both ends. So I'll be honest, my search thankfully wasn't too, terribly long, and I might even not be the best reference on this topic, but it really ended up being a really, really good fit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you also mentioned that the seller was looking for something specific. And I was talking to another dentist the other day, and he was he just bought a practice also. And he said that the seller would have the broker give him the names of the potential buyers and would filter them. He'd like look them up and everything, and like filter through them, and like, okay, yes, he can come in and do an interview. He can come in. So what was your seller looking for?
Yeah, and honestly, my seller was very similar in this regards. I know that multiple kind of buyers had been basically kind of had gone through that similar process. I think the best way to think about it is, let's reverse the roles and think about you. Think about, say you've accomplished everything you wanted to in your dental practice, and you're 65 years old, and this is your pride and joy. This building, the patient base, your team. This is like the culmination of your life's work. And when it comes down to it, you are basically selecting, or more or less working with the person who is going to be taking over for your patient, who is going to be looking at all of your bite wings and evaluating your work, who is going to be taking care of Mrs. Jones, who you saw for 30 years. And so really they want somebody that they know that they is going to do quality work, who's going to take care of their patient base, who's not just going to, throw them under the bus at every opportunity. So yeah, I the story you were saying, it does sound very similar. And the fact that they're really looking for someone who's going to carry on their torch and their legacy. It's kind of like, I don't know, say your dad's got a classic old car, and is he going to turn it right over to any 16-year-old, or is he going to make sure, he turns it over to the right one? So in terms of, what we were both looking for is, initially we had talked about doing a little bit of a transition period. But after a lot of talks with it, we decided to just do a kind of a hard split. And at the time I was really nervous about that, but in hindsight, it was actually the perfect thing for us, for both of us. So I will speak to that too, is, because there's ways of doing it. There's ways of employing the seller staying on for months or years. There's doing kind of a hard split like I did, and it was actually the best fit for both of us. Because if you think about it, things that go into this are the team. The team is going to see this new doc as the official owner on the books, but the doc who's been there for so long is still around. You know, say some things don't go right. Well, let's go act, you know, the old doc of how things should be done. Same thing with patients. Say you come in to, you know, do a recall exam and, you know, you tell them like, you know, ultimately these 3 broken teeth down here on the lower left, ultimately all do need crowns on them. Well, can you have the other old doc, you know, old doc never told me about that. Can he come take a look? So some of those factors really come into play. And in my case, like I said, I think it worked out for the best for all to kind of have a new clear voice going forward. The best example I'd heard of it is basically saying, you know, you will always be Robin to Batman until the seller doc is gone. And I think it was great to, when I came in to kind of create the vision that I was looking for, the type of practice that we wanted to be in like clinical care. And thankfully that came from kind of one unified new voice.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you mentioned about the staff and the patients. Did you experience a lot of turnover of the staff? How did that work out when you came in on day one? And you know, did the selling doc, you know, do a letter of goodwill to the patients? Tell me about the turnover of the staff and the patients.
Yeah, so we came in and thought what I had was mostly a solid team and ready to be going forward. The night before my first day of ownership, I received a text message at 8 o'clock saying that a team member that an assistant was not returning and she's taking a job elsewhere, and she was my only assistant scheduled for my first day. So needless to say, right off the bat, I had to do some juggling and scrambling. The rest, and then we ultimately decided, my wife has been very involved with this process with me, and we ultimately made the decision to have my wife kind of assume the role of what another team member had been doing. So we did have 2 parts of you know, turnover in the early, and then ultimately once that other team member did not return, I did end up hiring. So right off the bat, it was dealing with basically not bringing on an employee quitting, and then hiring. That was all within, you know, the first 2 weeks of ownership. So that was a lot. In terms of the patients, for the most part, I think I've done a good job of showing them who I am, that I care, that I have, you know, a good outgoing personality, and have done my best to make them feel welcome. I think we've had very few records request transfers. Some of them are just, they've been coming to him from a ways away, and I think just the transfer kind of gave them an opportunity to go to somewhere closer to home. But no, for the most part, we've been getting a lot of good feedback, a lot of great Google reviews, and I feel like we've done a good, strong job as a team of making patients feel welcome. My team, I'm very proud of them. They've done a good job of helping reassure the patients. They can kind of see who I am, the type of person I am, the type of doctor I am, and they have really, I can't say enough about how much they've gone to bat for me to be kind of my advocate before I even come in the room, and it's kind of sets the patients on the right trajectory. And you had asked about a transition letter. Yes, we did that. Basically, what the broker wanted was him to write the first one, and basically stating that after X amount of time, he's retiring. This is who he's selling to. It was a little bit about me. And now my wife and I are actually thinking about doing our own and sending out another mailing here soon, just kind of like officially introducing us and kind of what our plans are and visions are for the practice. And I will say this, if you do this all by yourself, it takes forever. And that's exactly what we did. Because if you think of like you're doing like over 1,000 letters or 1,400 letters, yeah. So, maybe we'll be outsourcing the next one, but we DIY'd the first one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's backtrack a little bit here. So first, let's talk about give me like a picture of your practice. So how many ops, like how many team members, and do you know like necessarily your patient base, or I don't know if you can tell your active patient base at this point, because there might still be attrition, but.
Yeah. So we have 5 ops. Basically, he was doing a lot of surgeries, and there's like 2 like closed rooms. So like he did a lot of like surgeries and crowns and things like that. He would do out of the 2. And then there was 3 additional ops, basically the 2 hygiene, each to, take one. And then there was kind of a 5th op that in the past had been used for a dental therapist, a mid-level provider. He had previously employed that. So I kind of have 3 ops for me to work out of. As far as the staff goes, we have 2 wonderful hygienists. And then we have currently two clinical assistants. One of mine she is kind of ready to retire, so I'm currently actively looking and trying to find my next fit. The one that I brought on, she's been awesome. She's a great fit. And then we have both my wife and then the long-term kind of office manager, clinic director who are basically at the front desk. So we're to be a total, I guess, of 7 of us. Patient base. My town, I'm in a town called of Wilmer, Minnesota. It's about like 20,000 and pretty decent drawing area from, I would say probably maybe 30 miles. There's a lot of smaller towns in the area surrounding that. We got a lot of blue collar workers, a lot of farmers, a lot of, I would say for the most part, probably maybe a little bit of an older demographic. And that's like exactly what I wanted to, God bless pediatric dentists. It's just really not my strong suit. I'll see kids, I do my best, but my passion is doing more advanced and more, I guess, more advanced work on maybe older patients who need more of the work. That's maybe more of who I really wanted to help and to work on. And I'm willing to see all patients. We see all sorts. We really started to do some advertising and some marketing, and we're getting all kinds in who are hearing about the great things we're doing. So.
Mm-hmm. Great. So that was going to be my next question about marketing. So what marketing? So you talked about the letters. What marketing are you going to start doing? What marketing have you done? And are you at the point where you can tell, yes, this works, no, this doesn't work?
So one of the mediums that this doc had used previously was the radio. We're kind of in a rural area, and a lot of people listen to the radio. So this would be like our first full month of running radio ads on 3 different stations. It's the word spreading. I mean, I'm getting texts and messages from people I went to high school with saying, "Hey, I heard you on the radio." So I know it's getting out there, and we're getting some patients that are starting to come in from it. It's a higher expense at this time, so I don't know if we'll maintain it forever. But right now, it's kind of like a, "Hey, this is me. I'm the new owner of the practice," and really trying to broadcast that out. We really began with our reputation management of really getting 5-star reviews. So we're working with Swell to help build our Google online presence. I basically started it from scratch, and I think we're like 28 5-star reviews in about 2 months.
Nice.
Very happy where that's going. We're getting right up there in our area. My vision for the team was to have us be the best ranked in our area by the end of the year. So that'd be basically 3 months in, and we're kind of on pace for that, and the team's kind of been a big advocate to help build that. And then we've also kind of dabbled with some Facebook ads, and that's actually been working decently too. A lot of people are seeing in our area. I don't think a lot of dentists in my area are doing it. And then going forward, I kind of have some big visions of some mailer campaigns and all sorts of stuff. But every market is going to be very different of what's going to work and what's not going to work. In a busy metro area, like probably the radio probably wouldn't be a very good ROI, and maybe more of like a pay-per-click or a targeted Facebook ad. So that's the thing. Right now, we're kind of a little bit in the trial phase of seeing what's working and what's reaching people. And like I said, thankfully in my area, it's marketing it doesn't seem like to be a big thing. So I see it as a lot of opportunity.
Mm-hmm. So have you started to dabble with social media at all? Anything like that?
Yeah, totally. We started a scratch start Facebook page, and we've really started to pour into that and put some good content on there. But just between me and my wife, kind of organically building it and growing it, and with some ads, I mean, we went from 0 to we're at 450 likes on the page, and it's growing. Like I said, we're kind of combining our Facebook ads with also just creating that we're kind of a fun page that people want to look at, not just hey, here's $99 whitening, but we're trying to really try to use it to build our brand and show our personality and our team and our staff. And and like I said, we're kind of dabbling with our ads and kind of learning how that all works. And but yeah, there's a lot you can do with Facebook ads too. And I mean, for people who aren't familiar with it, I mean, you can literally spend $1 a day. You can spend hundreds of dollars a day, and you kind of choose who you want it to go towards. So we're trying to figure out what's our ROI with that and the reach that we're getting. So,
Right.
uh,
Okay. So one more note. I know we kind of skipped over this, but I want to make sure we get this in this episode. How did you structure your deal for when you purchased the practice? Did you do like percentage of collections, percentage of production, or did you do like multiples of EBITDA? Like, how did you do that?
the deal was kind of set forth by the broker, and they kind of had set what their asking price was, and I kind of provided all that information to my CPA, and basically I asked them, I'm like, is this where we need to be based on what it's done, based off of whatever modality he used to come to the price. And I said, is this where it needs to be? Do we need to offer a full price one, or do we need to potentially make an offer on it? And he said he agreed with the assessment, and he's like, he'll get this. So he's like, I would just make to keep the goodwill, I would just make a full price offer, and that's what I ended up doing. There's many ways that do evaluate it. I mean, the old tried and true is what, the 65 to 75% of collections is kind of at least a framework. And the other one would be like a multiple of the profit. But yeah, so that was the price was kind of set forth, and I just kind of basically confirmed that it was where it should be. And my advisory team said, yeah, he'll get this, and I would make a full price offer on it.
Okay, cool. So next question is, so as you're, moving forwards with your practice, is there a piece of technology that you've purchased that has just, blown the practice out of the water, just, had crazy ROI, anything like that?
I wouldn't say the crazy ROI yet, but I knew I needed a cone beam, and we got it. We bought it about, when did that get installed? A couple weeks ago. And it's just been huge. It's been great for, just visualizing structures in bone and for pre-planning of implants. And I knew it was paramount. I knew I needed to do it, and ended up getting a really great deal on a new model for much less than I thought I was going to have to spend on it. I knew I was going to have to get one, but thankfully I was able to, a month into it to get that. And now it's allowed me to start, placing implants in the practice. And but yeah, cone was a big one. Next steps for me kind of look probably getting towards some form of, digital scanner. And I was really familiar with my workflow and residency of printing surgical guides. So probably in the coming year will be a scanner and a 3D printer to help, really dial in my placement. And what it really, for people not super familiar with implant surgery, is, you can do it freehand, and there's a lot of guys that are very, very good at it. But what I found is the predictability and just efficiency that guided surgery allows. It's a no-brainer. I really want to start to incorporate that more and more, even for what looks like a slam dunk single. You really got to evaluate all of your different angulations when you're placing, and to kind of help take that variable out, and to know that it's right on the money. It's right where you want it. All your angulation spots are perfect, and it makes your surgery time like super quick. And it just, like I said, it just helps take a lot of the thinking. You're doing a lot of thinking at the front end when you're planning it in the computer, and then your guide is just helping you put it right where you need to, making surgery super efficient, super predictable. That's kind of what I see in my vision for 2021.
Mm-hmm. And so which implant system are you using?
I was in the past familiar with both BioHorizons, Zimmer, and Straumann. Currently, I've just kind of maintained what the doctor had used, and he's been using Implant Direct.
Okay, and you're totally fine with that, with using that one?
Yeah, I'd say after you kind of use one, after you get kind of familiar with what all goes into an implant system and the parts and the components, a lot of times then it's kind of learning it the first time is the biggest step, and then after that you're able to kind of adapt, and you just learn basically they have all similar components and stuff. It's just learning, what does this drill mean, or what is this, how long, all the markings on the drill are going to tell you different lengths, and this one comes in these sizes and those lengths. So that's the biggest difference from system to system, in my opinion.
Okay. So also, now that you are practice owner, we talked about KPIs that you were looking at when you're, searching for a practice. Now, as the practice owner, what are the KPIs that you're watching right now, and what are you doing to improve those?
Yeah, I'll be honest, it's probably one area that I need to probably dial in a little bit. We're currently still kind of gathering a lot of data as we're going, working with the bookkeeper and getting like the QuickBooks set up and talking with the CPA. So we're still kind of in data gather mode, so I can kind of use a lot of those numbers going forward. I can say that the big things right now is mostly looking at kind of, what are we doing in a month, and we haven't necessarily been getting where I want to yet. And I kind of have, my target and my vision of goals of where we want to go. I'm hoping where things are kind of, we've had a lot of cases that are starting to come up, and where things are shaping up for hopefully a pretty good December. I'm really looking forward to that. But, as time goes on, the big KPIs that I intend to really look at is obviously your collections. I think that's a big one on a month-to-month basis that any practice owner should be looking at and evaluating, especially because what it comes down to is it kind of comes down to intentional scheduling. It's just okay, if everyone's kind of has their eye on the scoreboard, it at least kind of helps us do that. Whereas if we're not intentional about that, it's not going to necessarily maybe lead where we want to go. So it's kind of getting the team on board with saying, hey, this is where, this is what we need to do in a month, or this is what we want to do in a month, to provide great care and for us to meet our goals as a practice. And then it's obviously right now it's also hard with, I'm just buying so much equipment and stuff and supplies and materials. So it's really hard to get an accurate gauge on what like a monthly supply bill would be. You always hear the numbers say, 4 to 6%, but right now it's really tough to assess because I'm kind of, every day I come home, I'm like, oh, I didn't have this today. All right, I need to go order 6 of those. I got to order 10 of those. So it's kind of an exploratory time right now. So going forward, it'd be kind of looking at that monthly scoreboard of, okay, what are our supplies at? What's our lab bill at? What are our other expenses? Your staff costs are going to be your biggest expense, and that's going to be hopefully relatively, fixed from time to time, and you're not really going to be able to make that lower. So really, when it comes down to it, your best defense that is offense. So it's really producing more, because I don't think any staff member wants to hear, hey guys, we didn't do very good last month, so we're paying you less. No, it's like, well, our best way to do that, guys, is for us to do more. And going forward, it'd be to evaluate kind of a staff bonus system based off of, like a productions and collections. And that's kind of something, once we get more months of data, I think that'll be, a great way to encourage staff and the team to, when everyone's tired at the end of the day and, somebody's got a toothache, it's like, well, let's step up and let's get this person taken care of. And when everyone's got a little more skin in the game, and when obviously the patient needs the care first and foremost, but if they start to see, that guys, if we all do this together, we all pitch in, I'll flip your room, or I'll go see the patient, or I'll clean up that other room. If everyone kind of has that attitude because they know it's all for a greater good, you're much more, to get, as Howard Fran says it, getting more players diving for the ball.
There you go. Yeah, Howard Fran, what a guy. We had him on the podcast a while ago.
What a personality.
He's great. I love him. So, we've gone through just about everything with your practice. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with all of our listeners. I know they're going to learn a ton. Are you ready for the lightning round of questions?
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it. So I guess, this doesn't have to be lightning answers, but what are some of the best books and podcasts that you've listened to?
Well, I got it all right up here. Let's see. Where do I even start? Podcasts, I'm, a big advocate of shared practices, learned a ton from them. As far as specific books, like I said, I'm honestly just looking here of what one has been a big, strong one for me. Honestly, a big one for me lately, I've read it multiple times. Atomic Habits is a huge one for me. And I actually have a tattoo on my left wrist of plus 1%. And that idea came from that book. And that's like kind of a daily reminder of me that the day in and day out to get 1% better as a leader, an owner, a spouse. But he kind of talked about that, and that kind of helped shape that mindset for me. So I would say Atomic Habits has been a huge one. And, that's even just kind of outside of dentistry. But other than that, I'm going through Traction right now, and Traction's been a good book to help me kind of establish mission, vision, and core values for the practice. Everything in there is put down very systematized. E-Myth Revisited, great book about kind of getting you away from the technician mindset into make sure you're wearing the hats of technician, manager, and entrepreneur. And so those have been big ones to really kind of help shape the philosophy of that. I don't know how, I'm probably totally not doing this lightning round thing very good.
No, this is perfect. You're explaining what they are. Most people don't explain what they're about. So that's great. And those are all great books. I know of all of them. So I've read 2 of them. Still have yet to do to read Traction. So that's next on the list. Great. Now, so we said books and podcasts. How about CEs? Let's go with a clinical CE and a business CE.
So I went to both. I went to Dr. Mark Costas's Dental Success Summit. I went to that twice. I went 2018 and 2019. That would be more the business end. That was huge. Just learned a ton. Got to kind of see a wide variety of speakers. They each kind of got their chance to kind of dabble a little bit, and you kind of got exposed to their content. I thought that was great. As far as clinical, I kind of have 2 big ones on the docket for next year. I signed up for Dr. Wade Pilling's aesthetic full mouth rehab course. So I'm going to that in, I think that's April and May. I'm super stoked about that. Been really a big fan of his from afar, and does great clinical work. And I'm also planning on probably doing implant pathway just to kind of feel pretty confident, but I just kind of want to get a top to bottom core fundamentals of implant stuff. So that's kind of on the docket for 2021. 2022, probably looking at IV sedation. That's what I'm kind of looking towards for the next big step.
That's awesome. I love that you're planning to 2022. That's great. Okay. And so we talked about favorite technology before. How about your favorite dental materials that you're using right now?
Favorite dental materials right now. Been dabbling with a lot. I've been really trying to take my composite game to the next level. I mean, you see a lot of, I wasn't super big into Instagram, in dental school and stuff, but now you see these guys doing these just beautiful composites. So I've kind of been just getting more and more into trying to do that. So I bought a bunch of new, just like sculpting composite instruments, just outside of like your plastic paddle. And I've really been trying to take my composites to the next level. So I bought a bunch of instruments from Wise Instruments, and really trying to get my composites more and more aesthetic and anatomical.
Great. And how do you spell? Is it just WISE?
Yep.
Okay, got it. All right. Next question. What is one dental analogy that's helped your patients understand and improve your case acceptance?
All right, perfect. I heard this one the other day. This is probably about a month ago, and this is like just the perfect pearl, and I use it all the time now. So patient comes in, they got, a tooth with either a huge composite on it or a big amalgam, and it's got cracks running all over it, or part of the amalgam is already chipped away and it's got decay around it. And you tell them that it needs a crown, and they say, well, it doesn't hurt, I don't need a crown. And when you say this, like, are you ready for this? This is so perfect. It's basically saying, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, what you got right here, this is basically a bald tire. Right now it's still going, but, and then you might get 500 miles out of this tire, but you also might blow it on your first turn out of here. So I'm just letting you know that you're kind of playing with borrowed time, and this tooth, while it may not hurt you, just like a bald tire doesn't have you stranded on the side of the road, doesn't mean that it's not, about to break. That's
great. I love that. Yeah. I mean, everybody can relate with the car analogies. I have not heard the bald tire before, so that's excellent. I'm definitely going to use that. Oh, it seems like almost all my patients right now have these massive amalgams with all these cracks, and I can't sometimes at dental school let me do it, sometimes they won't, but hey. So
here's what you should do. This is what I have.
Yeah.
I want you to get like a little picture flow, and this is what I do. Have a picture of the amalgam looks similar to theirs with the cracks. Then show them the next one of either a tooth split down the middle or a big cusp broke off of it. Okay. You say, this is kind of the road that your tooth's going down. I'm not saying it's going to happen to you tomorrow or next week or next year. I can't be a fortune teller. And then you have a third picture of a before and after, one with a big broken amalgam on it. And then you have one with like a beautiful ceramic crown on it. So it shows them where they are, what's probably going to happen. We know big, like I said, huge amalgam that's, more than half the intercuspal distance, that's got fracture lines going down it. You you know it's going to get there. You don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or if it's going to be in 5 years, but you know eventually that thing is going to break off. And you know, just show them like this is kind of the circle of life of it, and here's what, you know, a nice example of a before and after with the big amalgam in it, and here's what it's going to look like with a beautiful sealed and protected crown on it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that definitely, that sounds like that's going to be a swish every time. But see, the thing is for us, it's like, okay, some of our preceptors say, yes, you can do a crown on it, or no, don't touch it. Like, so it's just like, oh my God, what's the solution here? But no, I agree with you. It's a ticking time bomb. So, next question is, what would you tell a new practice owner, or not a new practice owner? Let's go with, what would you tell somebody who is right now in the process of purchasing a practice? What's one tip that you would give them?
I would really make sure, just like how I said, how, you know, young dental students should have things written out for where they want to be. That's kind of exactly what I did. Because if you write out like what you want, you're not necessarily going to try and fit an opportunity to that. You know, you might say, okay, you know, if you don't have your vision clearly written out, and by that I mean, like I knew I wanted to be high level solo doc, you know, eventually get to a beautiful modern practice, high touch customer service, all that sort of stuff. But you say, well, there is this practice that's like, you know, it's cheap, and it's like I'd be a partner, and you know, we'd be working weekends, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't align. And then when you kind of know what you're looking for, it just helps you not try and put a square peg in the round hole, you know. Or if you're looking for, oh, like I want to have a big group practice, and like I want to have either partners or associates or something like that, and then you say, oh well, there is this 3-op cheap practice, you know, in this area. Well, it's like that really doesn't fit, you know what I mean? So you can kind of, you know, as cheap as it might be, or it might be in a great spot, if you can clearly articulate like this is where I want to go, you're less likely to get distracted on it. So that'll, you know, it might be a good idea to set like a bare minimum of operatories or potential operatories, or like I said, what's the clinical doc situation that they're looking for. So that's the big thing, is just be intentional about where you want things to go, and then start, versus just looking at practice and saying, oh, well, maybe this will work, or, you know, I can make that work.
Mm-hmm. I love it. That's fantastic. And you mentioned group dentistry. Wow. That's the next podcast that we're going to do, because that's a whole nother discussion, you know? So, Doc, thank you so much for talking. Can you give our listeners your contact information, ways to reach you, all that sort of stuff?
Totally. Yeah, like I said, the reason I'm doing this is because there's a lot of, you know, people who came before me, and I listened to a lot of their content. And I said I knew once I got to this point that I wanted to be of service and be able to help. And who knows what the future brings for me. I mean, I see some form of, whether it be coaching, consulting, book writing, that's where I eventually see myself going. But for now, absolutely. People can reach out to me. Facebook would probably be a good one. Trent, Trent, Neisen, Neisen. And the other probably good one would be email, and that's trent.neisen.dds@gmail.com.
Awesome. Again, thanks so much for talking with us, and you have dropped so many bombs for our listeners. I love it. I can't wait to talk to you in, 6 months, a year from now, and just find out that you are totally crushing it, because I love the mindset that you've had. So I wish you the best of luck with your practice.
Well, it was a pleasure being on here. I'm glad to be a part of what you've created here. I think it's so great to, like I said, to gear this towards the dental student. And yeah, it's my pleasure. And I look forward to following up in the future. I hope it brought a lot of value today, and I'd love to be a resource to anyone wherever they're at on their journey.
Awesome. Thanks again.
All right, guys, that'll wrap it up for our interview with Dr. Trent Neisen, a private practice owner in Minnesota. He's 2 months out of school. He's killing the game. We wish him the best of luck. We really enjoyed his take on the dentist aspect of private practice acquisition. He just went through the process. He provided a wealth of information. So as always, share this with a friend. Let them see it. This is a huge, huge episode just to get the awareness about the process of acquiring your own office. So as always, follow us on Instagram at dental.student.vibes. Make sure you share this with a friend. Give us a like, a comment, or review, whatever you can do for us. We appreciate you. And as always, stay safe and vibe on.